Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. We've talked a good bit about the travesty of justice that is the General Flynn prosecution. And we've gone through it in some detail, but there's something that eluded me, and I don't think that we've highlighted this enough, and it was brought to my attention yesterday, the importance of it on my syndicated show, which, by the way, is now available on the AM 560 app, Amy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for easy listening for you.
Because I don't spend enough time with you. I want to spend 3 more hours with you.
Absolutely right. Adam Mill, he's an attorney specializing in labor and employment law, writes for the Federalist. We've had him on the show. So we were talking about the Flynn prosecution in light of these notes that were revealed last week, and he reminded us of this.
Flynn is being accused of lying about a conversation with the Russian ambassador, and that is all supposedly on audio tape somewhere. But you know what? They've never allowed Flynn or his attorneys to listen to that audio tape or read the transcripts. So not only did they edit the statement that they say is a lie, they won't let him listen to what it is he said in the first place. Well, he has to totally rely on their faith, on faith, that what he did was wrong, or what they say he did, he actually did.
For more on the case against General Flynn, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Roger Kimball, editor of the new Criterion. Roger, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure.
You've written on General Flynn as well. I just thought that the point that Counselor Mill made there hasn't been accentuated enough, that they have they allege they have this tape conversation that nobody's heard, including Flynn.
Yes. Well, he really is at the right there at the center of what I regard as the biggest political scandal in our nation's history, namely the effort to overturn the results of a free and democratic election. The deep state, I know the denizens of the deep state don't like people to talk about it, but it clearly exists, this establishment culture that didn't like Donald Trump, was determined to destroy his candidacy, and when that failed, they were determined to destroy his administration. Every day now, it seems, we get another revelation about Flynn, that there was no predicate whatsoever to go after him. They had essentially closed the case on this wild speculation that he was somehow involved with the Russians early in January. And then Peter Strzok. Remember, Peter Strzok, at the very last moment, he said, no, keep it open. And Strzok, of course, is one of the 2 FBI agents who went to interview him. It's clearly quite extraordinary. Here you have an incoming national security advisor. Of course he's going to talk to the Russian ambassador, as you talk to the ambassador of many countries with whom we have, close ties, important ties. So the whole thing was a total fabrication from beginning to end. And now we find out that they had threatened his son with another made-up charge. The first charge they threatened Flynn was with a violation of the Logan Act. No one has ever been convicted of this act, which is very likely unconstitutional. And they were certainly not going to start with General Flynn. It is an incredible miscarriage of justice, and I hope that that Judge Emmett Sullivan will dismiss the case. He seems like a fairly tough nut, actually, but we'll see. We'll see.
Well, Roger, what about the 2
you're
agents?
You're right to bring up that nobody has seen. At least I have not seen the transcript. I can't say it. Nobody has, but I have not seen the transcript, nor have I listened to the audio of that conversation.
Roger, what about the 2 agents sent to lure him into that perjury trap?
Well, yes. That's exactly. There was no predicate for them doing so. They went around standard protocol, which is if you want to speak to somebody in the White House, you go through the White House counsel. You make sure that whoever it is you're talking to has a lawyer there. There's a little video clip making the rounds of James Comey on his book tour. I think he was at the 92nd Street Y in New York.
Right.
Being interviewed, the interviewer said, "Well, how did these two agents happen to go there?" And he said, smirking in that insufferable way that he has, "Oh, I sent them." Because this was the very beginning of the administration. They didn't know what they were doing, so I thought we could get away with it. Imagine that, the director of the FBI, then the former director of the FBI, saying, "I sent them. We could get away with it because the administration was so disorganized." It's practically an admission of guilt.
I want to get to this MIT study that came out yesterday. Let's talk lockdowns here. This MIT study, a bunch of well-regarded economists, they looked at the relative risks of infection, hospitalization, death for the young, the middle-aged, and those over 65 of various lockdown policies, from least restrictive to most restrictive. What they find is, and I'm quoting from the study, a semi-targeted policy that involves the lockdown of those above 65 until a vaccine arrives can release the young and middle-aged groups back into the economy much more quickly and still achieve a much lower fatality rate in the population. Targeted lockdowns also reduce economic harm. The policy reduces the economic damage from an estimated 24% contraction in GDP to 12.8% of 1 year's GDP. So it cuts this study, with certain caveats, but the top line is it cuts the GDP damage in half, and it actually lowers the overall fatality rate in the population writ large.
Yes, but don't forget that the economic damage is as far as the progressives who view this as a chance to exert greater control over the population. They view the economic damage not as a bad thing, but as a good thing.
Right.
It's good in itself because, as Obama's his former economic advisor said, we want to have de-development in the United States because it will be good for the environment. So they regard the economic damage as a good thing. Plus, of course, it's damaging, they hope, to the president. So it's this Marxist idea that the worse things are, the better they are, because the more it will conduce to revolution. And that's what they're hoping for. You guys are in Chicago. I saw a video clip of your esteemed mayor the other day saying that, if you're out and about, we'll cite you, we'll arrest you, we'll take you to jail. I was saying to your producer before we went on the air, she's found her inner Gauleiter.
Yes.
Have so many state and local authorities. It's funny in a way, but it's also terrifying. The longer this goes on, the more such incidents you'll see.
Well, that's right. And Charles Blow in the New York Times has a good example, column that is a good example of what you're talking about. The COVID-19 crisis exposing the savagery of American democracy. It's an indictment of our entire system, and it's an indictment of a free society. But the emphasis of this MIT study, why it's so damaging to the narrative of the left, and the only thing they shall tolerate is obedience and silence in obedience, is it's the balanced approach that so many experts, rely on the experts, Nobel Prize winners in this space have suggested from the outset. It's the approach that Sweden took. And it turns out, at least according to this study, and it's not the end-all, be-all, it wasn't received from on high, but nonetheless, reduces the overall fatality, reduces the economic damage. If that's the case, shouldn't that at least be part of the conversation? I mean, these MIT economists didn't just fall off a turnip truck.
Yes, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. The spectacle of people quivering in place at this, what is essentially the same kind of bug that causes a cold or a flu, is it's really sobering how fragile this great country is. What had to happen to turn the citizens of this country from free citizens who would say things like "give me liberty" or "give me death," or who fought the American Revolution to fight against the long train of abuses and usurpations, put on this country by King George. What had to happen to turn us into people who cannot end a telephone conversation these days without saying "stay safe."
Oh, I can't stand that. If anybody else tells me to stay safe, I might bop them. My response, Roger, is this: no, stay sane. I am staying
Yes.
safe. I've been staying safe. You know.
Yeah.
So, what does your lockdown look like where you are?
Well,
You
I
said
live
New
in
York.
Connecticut.
Oh,
It's,
Connecticut. Same
you
difference.
can't enter a grocery store or any other sort of emporium without wearing, those that are open, which are few, without wearing a mask. I had to go to FedEx yesterday, and there's signs everywhere to keep distance, and it's really that line of T.S. Eliot's poem, "The Wasteland." I've seen fear in a handful of dust. That's what's happened. People are afraid, and the media and the left, they are doing everything in their power to cultivate that fear, and as I say, turn us from free citizens into quivering and therefore docile sheep.
Well, I'll tell you what, if Chicago ever reopens, when you come to town, I'll take you over to the Violet Hour, since I know you're a T.S. Eliot fan now. Let me also get your reaction to this.
Is that a bar?
It's a bar, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yes, no, I'd like to go.
Yeah. It's I think you'll like the ambiance too, as the man of letters that you are.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, you two go have a splendid time.
we will. Speaking of letters, Pulitzer has announced some prizes.
Yes.
The Pulitzer Prize for Commentary, 1619 Project founder Nicole Hannah-Jones.
The single most mendacious article published in the last year, and of course, the New York Times basically they give themselves the prizes. The Pulitzer Prize is, for all intents and purposes, controlled by organs like the New York Times. Here you have a flood the zone multi-essay project whose dual thesis is, one, America was founded as a slaveocracy, and two, the American Revolution was fought in order to perpetuate the institution of slavery.
Right.
These are monstrous falsehoods, and it's you could just dismiss it, except for the fact, of course, that with the help of the Pulitzer Foundation, separate from the Pulitzer Prize Committee, but with the help of that foundation, the Times has insinuated these ideas into the curricula of 3,500 schools.
Rod Dreher puts it at 4,500, actually. 4,500 classrooms now.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, yes, they're making progress. They're working away there to foist a lying and very destructive image of what this country was founded to do. It's terrible.
And also too, just add a note on this too. You have historians from across the political spectrum in academia who have all said, almost to a person, that Nicole Hannah-Jones's account of the founding of this country is totally manufactured. It has no basis in historical fact, and she sits here today with a Pulitzer Prize. I thought it was bad when Mary Schmeek of the Tribune got a Pulitzer Prize for writing about her cats, but this is much worse.
Wear sunscreen.
He is Roger Kimball. He's editor of the New Criterion. Roger, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Take care.
Yeah. Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
Famous conservative quotes, presented by Automated Systems.
The late, great Winston Churchill said, "You will never reach your destination if you stop and throw stones at every dog that barks." Pretty wise words considering all of the distractions in modern society.
Manufacturing companies, I encourage you to call my friend Laz Kulchar from Automated Systems. Automated Systems is a software and systems integration company that specializes in companies that are required to meet FDA compliance requirements.